Okay, I'll start off by telling you today's show is going to be a little bit different. I think you're going to like it. We have a brand new segment. I'm going to open the show, though, with this question. Men, do we need the PSA? It stands for prostate-specific antigen. Not only is it not a cancer test, it's not prostate-specific. How did this test get on the market? Okay, I'll talk a little bit about that. Jenny Herbachik is going to talk about liquid biopsy, and then toward the end of the show, my dear friend Marty Witek is going to be here talking about this. When this is awry, when you're constipated, bloating, belching, gas, etc., diarrhea, when this is awry, it seems all of this is awry. And then in the middle of today's show, something exciting, something much, much different. All that and more on Know the Cause. My name is Doug Kaufman. For the past 40 years, I've dedicated my life and even my career to finding the root cause of disease. Join me in a team of physicians, pharmacists, and scientists, and soon you too will know the cause. You know, I could talk about prostate disease and the PSA test for hours, but I only have 5 minutes, so I want to get through it quickly. I keep a file under my computer in the office. This was 9 years ago, a little over 9 years ago, this headline: prostate cancer patients pick treatments that may worsen the quality of their life. Not the doctor's fault. It's your fault. We told you you have cancer, and we're letting the men pick the treatment. Since when, folks? Since when do we get to pick the treatment? I mean, this is one of the more pathetic areas of all medical science. Here's some facts. PSA stands for prostate-specific antigen. Prostate-specific. Only men have a prostate. The urethra, the urine tube, goes smack through the prostate. So when this thing clamps down, gets swollen, we dribble. We don't have a good urine stream, okay? And yet some pregnant women have very high PSA. So it's not prostate specific at all. It's not a cancer test. Never was a cancer test. And so you can see how Dr. Almond, who wrote the book, The Great Prostate Hoax, expounded on this as a test that ended up hurting a lot of men. So let's go through what's going on with it, because one year I hear doctors, urologists, are saying, no, throw it away, it didn't work. Next year I'm hearing, oh no, it's the most valuable thing in the world. And I've got to tell you, I think Wall Street's involved in some of these choices. To PSA or not to PSA? Until 2012, all men except Doug Kaufman routinely got a PSA test. In 2012, the PSA test became de-recommended because the benefits do not outweigh the harms caused by the test. You got that? In 2012, it became de-recommended. So a guy goes to his urologist and the doctor says, well, we're not going to do a PSA test anymore. Truth be known, it's not an accurate test. It is estimated that 1 million men, this came out of the Wall Street Journal, February 14th, 2013, estimated that 1 million men who have been treated unnecessarily since the FDA approved the PSA test for diagnosing prostate cancer in 1994, many of whom suffered infections or other complications. You guys know who we're talking about, including incontinence, impotence, and the list is almost endless. Because a blood test told us that we have prostate cancer. You know, I've done a lot of work on this show about what the PSA really does and really is, okay? But recently, this just a few months ago, as a matter of fact, 2017, I think it was March or April. But newer research shows the benefits from active surveillance with the PSA test of men 55 to 69 years old. Now at 70, they say no more prostate, no more PSAs, whose initial PSA tests and biopsies indicate slow-growing cancer that hasn't spread, the panel said. Wow. This approach includes repeated PSA tests and close monitoring, which can delay or even avoid the need for treatment. I really don't know where to go from here. Guys, you're the ones I'm talking to. For years, I remember books coming out written by urologists that were telling women, get your husband's digital rectal exam done by a doctor and make sure they do a PSA test. Man, how many billions of dollars did that test make for drug companies and for laboratories? Here's the bottom line. A positive PSA leads to a biopsy. If that's positive, it leads to surgery. If that's now gone, then surveillance and medication, likely the rest of the man's life. You're looking at a guy who'll be 68 years old here soon. I don't know what a PSA test is. I did get an insurance policy 10, 15 years ago, life insurance policy, and they drew blood and they said they tested my PSA. I could have cared less, but apparently mine was okay. The new evidence versus old evidence. This is what I want all we old timers to see. This came out of Current Oncology 2009. When the US FDA approved the PSA test in 1994 for screening, the approval was not based on rigorous study of the specificity or sensitivity of the test. The FDA never looked at the benefits and risks beyond a 3.8% detection rate compared with a 0.8% to 1.4% detection rate for the digital rectal exam. Did you hear that? The PSA test is 3.8% accurate. You went to high school, you went to college. When you got a 3.8%, did they give you a C? Because they're saying it's as good as a B. I got an F. That's just not a test I rely on very much, but don't let me be the doctor. Let your doctor and your heart guide you, okay? Just my take.
Hi, I'm Jenny Herbacek with the Cancer Connection. Have you heard of the new term liquid biopsy? Did you know that physicians can now detect and analyze the characteristics of solid tumors without disturbing the area to acquire a tumor tissue sample, but with a simple blood test? So if you find yourself in a situation where a tissue biopsy is being recommended, discuss the possibility of a liquid biopsy with your physician. A list and description of several labs offering this kind of testing are described in my book, Cancer Free, Are You Sure? For Know the Cause, I'm Jenny Herbacek.
I am sort of like a magnet. I attract the most fascinating people. I'm at a meeting quickly in San Diego here a few months ago, and a doctor came up and gave me his card, Dr. David Kennedy. He is on with us right now. He is a dentist in the San Diego area, but he publishes and publishes. Folks, how many of you asked me at meetings, online, in my social media, do you have amalgam, do you have mercury in your mouth? And I say 20, 30 years ago, I had all of mine removed. This doctor, I wish I'd have known. Dr. Kennedy, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Almond.
Do tell, when did you have that epiphany? I mean, you graduated from dental school. Did you used to put amalgam fillings in a mouth?
Well, I certainly did, and lots of them. And I was in the Navy, and I put in a bunch. And but what was interesting is as over the years, the standards for which you could have an occupational exposure have marched steadily downward. And that I was trying to get the Navy dental clinics down to 100. Today, 100 parts per million is flee the area and return in a spacesuit. And we were standing around in shirt sleeves.
Is it 1-2 parts now, or what?
It's down to 0.3.
Parts per million or billion?
Yeah, million.
Per million, whoa.
Which is way too high. It's all political, it's not science. A baby was poisoned nearly to death at 2. Some mold-inhibiting pain in the nursery. And so they, 0.3 is fine. Well, no, that's just a factor of 6. I mean, that's not a protective factor.
Wow.
And you're using death as an endpoint. That's not we got to use something like IQ or something. Right?
I go, every 9 months or a year for a prophy, a dental cleaning. And they always say be very, very careful because he can free up some germs in your gums and so forth that might cause a heart attack. Where's your heart on that one?
I think that it's exactly where we were in the 1840s when Dr. Semmelweis said, wash your hands before you deliver a baby.
Yep.
There is no excuse for dentistry to be showering bacteria into the bloodstream of everybody who gets their teeth cleaned. And so it's stupid because these are germs. You can disinfect them before you clean the teeth, the same way you can wash your hands before you deliver a baby. And so we're getting exactly the same pushback that Semmelweis did when he said, wash your hands before you deliver a baby. Oh, you can't prove that because this, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you can. And we can prove that you're spreading bacteria to the bloodstream, and we find their DNA in your atherosclerotic plaques, on your heart valves, in your strokes, in your kidneys, all over your body. Stop it.
He is now Whet Your Appetite. David Kennedy, DDS, on YouTube. A lot of informational YouTube clips. He also has a book, How to Save Your Teeth, and fluoride with a U, fluoridegate.org. You can get all of this information. Dr. Kennedy, bless your heart. Thank you for coming on today.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. What were you doing 6 years ago? I know precisely what I was doing through the magic of retro television. After that, Marty's going to be here and talk about gut health. Watch this. So you see, we opened with all of these good foods on the Phase 1 diet, and I shouldn't say good or bad, I shouldn't differentiate. I should say okay foods on the Phase 1 diet and not okay foods on the Phase 1 diet. And we stopped here, Kyle, with carrots. I always thought there was like one nutrient, right? All you read 40 years ago was beta-carotene.
Yep.
And then along comes falcarinol and 300 other carotenoids, and we realize carrot is a really good food, but it's also high on what we call the sugar index or the glycemic index.
Yeah, the glycemic index is something that, as you said, is measuring how quickly the insulin and how profoundly the insulin is affected by the sugar that's in the food.
And if insulin was the problem, Kyle, then I'd say, okay, there's something to this high glycemic index, you know. But insulin isn't the problem, folks. Eating poison is the problem. It's one of the reasons I believe you need carrot in the diet because of the falcarinol.
I can't believe how many people who have talked to you personally have gone and started juicing carrots every day, and that begins the turnaround. This, though being high glycemic index, is a medicinal food, and I think it's the falcarinol and the plethora of yet to be discovered nutrients that are still found in them.
So you see, this would be off on a glycemic index. You see these ads on TV. This would be into the bad area. We have carrots in the good area because of the good nutrition in it. God put it here. I'd hate to say it's too high on Earth's index, sugar index, but it isn't too high on God's index. Here are some of the foods, though, that we ask you to stay off of during the period of time that you're on the Phase 1 diet. You ever been asked, how long do I have to stay on this diet?
Yeah, all the time. And the fact is, I stay on the diet by choice.
Yeah.
I feel better on it. And to me, this is so easy to avoid now. It wasn't in the early days.
Yeah.
But once you get a few recipes down, once you start finding what you like, but a lot of people have a hard time with this. Giving this up is the hardest part.
Well, let me show you this. This is Mrs. Baird's, and I'm sure they're just a great, great bakery. And on the front of Mrs. Baird's bread, it says rich in antioxidants, vitamins A and E. And we tend to think that is part of what they pulled up from the ground. These are added, as was riboflavin in the old days, and I'm sure it still is. These have potent antifungal benefits, and fungus can grow on bread in the container like this. So all of these cereals and things like that are fortified with nutrients, as far as I know, are fortified with nutrients to keep fungus from growing.
Yeah, but to make it clear, even though it's fortified with those things that are antifungal, this is not on the Phase 1 diet. And in fact, one of the biggest parts of this, one of the biggest questions that we get asked is, what about whole grain bread?
Right.
That's surely got to be on it because everybody likes whole grain. It doesn't matter if it's whole grain or what. The grain supply in America, that's the problem. It's the grain supply, particularly wheat, rye, corn, and peanuts.
Yep.
These are things that are loaded with mycotoxins, according to Dr. Ruth Etzel,
Yep.
Journal of the American Medical Association. So corn, wheat, peanuts, this is a big deal.
Sugar, down here, this is just a staple in the American diet. Now, let's get to these. Here we have oranges, here we have grapes, here we have bananas. What's wrong? You told us on the Phase 1 we could have grapefruit and apple, green apples and berries. What's wrong with these?
Yeah, the problem with those is it's unfortunate. But so many people today are so loaded down and burdened with symptoms that to add the extra sugar that these things contain, this really burdens people even further. And if we could just stay away from those for a while. The bananas we have in America these days aren't even real food, in my opinion. Slice one open, try to find a seed. There are no seeds in these.
How do you propagate that? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. These are hybridized sort of foodstuffs.
Yep.
So even though these are typically what you would consider good, the way that we're burdened in America right now, we just need to stay off of them for a while.
Let me just ask you quickly, can you see this? I don't know if Devin can capture that. Heart healthy on corn oil.
Oh boy.
We have to be careful of that, folks. You know, for many reasons, corn is universally contaminated with mycotoxins. And then there's that whole question people have about, I'm now on a gluten-free diet. I never thought it was that fraction of the wheat that God got wrong, right? It's the mycotoxin in. Here is, you know, a corn product.
Gluten-free.
That is gluten-free. And I think that is so fascinating that we have, can you get that? Yeah, gluten-free
But not
corn.
mycotoxin-free.
Not
That's the
mycotoxin-free.
problem.
This is the side of the table you want to stay away from. All this information is in our books, by the way. You can get plenty of information that way. But I hope you're getting information now that you really wanted. So what did I learn? That it isn't the sugar content of foods or the glycemic index. It's the ability of that food to feed or starve fungus. To a commercial we go, then Marty will be here with us.
Since I became a pescatarian, I allow nuts and nut butters, mainly almond butter, to be a consistent source of protein in my diet. I love it on a slice of toasted, guiltless 7-seed bread. I'm also a runner and training for the Austin Marathon, so a slice of our seed toast with almond butter is a great source of good recovery, healthy fats and calories, as well as long-lasting energy. Now, one of the downfalls of buying almond butter in the store is how expensive it can be, and making your own almond butter couldn't be simpler. You need almonds and a food processor. Now, first, you want to dry roast your almonds in the oven on a pan at 350 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes. This releases their oils and flavors and makes them easier to grind. Let them cool a little, then while they're still warm, add them to your food processor using the S-blade. And now you just need some patience. The food processor will be running for a little while. The ground almonds will start to collect around the edges of the bowl, so be sure to scrape down the sides every few minutes and keep everything blending evenly. The almond butter will start to get warm and grainy, and then a few minutes more of processing, it should be smooth and creamy, even creamier than some of the store-bought brands. And you have more control over the almonds you use. If you'd like, you can add salt or seasonings. The entire processing might take 20 to 25 minutes until you get it smooth and creamy, so hang in there. The outcome is worth it.
You know what, folks? Joining me right now is someone I would go to if I had tummy problems, bloating, belching, gas, constipation, diarrhea. Do you ever say, I just have a gut intuitive, you know, my gut tells me? Your gut tells you so much. As a matter of fact, it might be responsible for every symptom going on in your body. So says Marty Witek, and she wrote a book many years ago. I still refer to this because of all your references in it. It's called Natural Alternatives to Taking All Those Proton Pump Inhibitors. And the other book, The Probiotic Cure. She is very knowledgeable in this area. She's a certified clinical nutritionist. She is my good buddy who's had a radio show for 20 plus years, a real sellout on the weekends. It's fascinating, called Healthy by Nature. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Was I right? Do symptoms start here very often and just travel throughout the body?
You said our digestive system talks to us a lot. The problem is we don't listen. Unless it really becomes obnoxious about it, if it creates gas and bloating or pain of some kind, we tend to ignore it. But especially when I was researching the probiotic cure and looking at those thousands of studies, I realized there is not one system in the body, whether we're talking about the brain, our appetite, our eyes, our ears, our kidneys, our liver, all of those things are related to what's going on in the intestinal tract, making signaling compounds and helping to educate the immune system. And we've just been ignoring them, just pretending like it didn't matter and we could shut off a process that was causing a problem like the stomach acid. And we know that those lead to all kinds of potentially lethal side effects because we need the digestive system to be doing its job, and people just have not been educated that it's important. They don't even know what to look for.
Yeah, you know, I remember giving B12 shots to people who had come in, and boy, once a week, they'd get in that car and they'd feel like $1 million. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what happened to their B12? Doesn't our body make B12? It sure does. That good bacteria in the gut makes B vitamins, right? Without it, you're like this all day. What do? You run to the doctor for $35, he'll give you a B12 shot. Why doesn't he educate you that you gotta put the bacteria back in there that makes the B? It's so frustrating to me, Marty. Science is a Band-Aid. It's just a big Band-Aid. And what you're trying to do here is know the cause. You're trying to teach people to understand the etiology of your health problems. I wonder how many people suffer from depression or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or senile dementia. And they've been on antibiotics for years and years and years, off and on. They don't understand that this is impacted by this. I mean, you've been in this field for a lot of years. It must be frustrating to you more than any of us.
Well, I'm sure it's equally frustrating to you because you know the truth. But back to that B12, such a good point. The stomach cannot make B12 if you're taking the proton pump inhibitors, these acid blocking heartburn drugs that you see on television. And so I've come to decide that when somebody says they have the symptom, the first question I ask is, what medication are you taking that's probably causing that? And so, well, how can we solve that problem with something natural and get to the root cause, which almost always involves something to do with the digestive system.
Speaking of that, brand new out in July, popular heartburn drugs linked to higher early death risk. It's crazy what's going on in America today. How would you like a private consultation with Marty? She doesn't really offer those anymore, but she's got something way, way better. You'd pay $150, $175 to sit down with a certified clinical nutritionist for half an hour. How about this? 30 of her courses on tummy issues, digestive issues, leaky gut, fungal problems, detox, probiotics, everything she knows for under $100. Now we're talking. You did that for a reason, Marty. You put it all on tape for a reason.
I can reach so many more people. And when I find that I keep saying the same things over and over again, it just makes sense to make it accessible to a lot more people who can then give it to friends and relatives who are having problems.
It's a course. Sometimes we walk into a regular food store or a health food store and we flounder. We don't know what to look for. Take the course. Here's the phone number, toll free, 888-490-1116, 888-490-1116. Thank you, Marty, for coming in.
Thank you, Deb.
I've been getting a lot of questions about iodine lately. High-dose iodine can be counterproductive. That's why I don't advise it unless you're tested and found to be deficient, or if you have fibrocystic breast disease. While it's true that iodine may help or even reduce a goiter, it's also true that too much can be bad. In fact, high-dose iodine can cause something called toxic multinodular goiter. I bet you're worried about taking too much iodine now. So what's a high dose? Well, it's hard to define because it's based on your individual chemistry, so you should be tested by your doctor, and I would do a 24-hour urine sample to evaluate your iodine levels. Now, some clinicians think a high dose of iodine is about 12.5 milligrams per day, and some say it's much, much less. My point is, the right amount of iodine heals your thyroid, whereas too much can make you worse. I'm Susie Cohen, America's pharmacist, and I love to think outside the pill.
Hey, thank you so much, Dr. David Kennedy. Isn't that interesting? Dangers in your mouth. There's a dentist that is advanced, I'll tell you. Thank you, Marty, for coming in and teaching us when this is gone, all this seems to be gone. Thank you for listening to my take on the PSA. Look, your doctor tells you he wants to do a PSA, do it. But use this show, use other sources of information, knowing that options do exist. That's what we don't hear in a doctor's office. So glad you're with us today. God bless you. Tell a friend about Know the Cause.